Welcome to the Greenlight Investor for the week ending March 13, 2015. This video presentation is for educational purposes only and should not be taken as personalized investment advice. I'll be going through the Greenlight Investor worksheet, and it does use hypothetical examples, and again, they're not meant as personalized investment advice. They're simply showing how you can use the worksheet to manage your own investment choices based on your own ability to take on risk, as well as the time horizon you have as an investor. Let's go ahead and go right into our worksheet. The goal of the Greenlight Investor is to make managing your 401k both a simple and easy process. We'll do this by using red, green, and yellow cells to help you decide when to buy, what to buy, and what to sell. Let's go ahead and take a look at the worksheet and some of the information, some of the areas where we provide a little bit of guidance that can be helpful for making your investment decisions. If you're new to the Greenlight Investor, we have an asset allocation questionnaire, which is a great place to start. It'll ask you 10 simple questions, and when you get those answered, it will show you a baseline allocation that you can plug right into this spreadsheet and get started. On the left side here, you'll see that we have the investment choices available to you in your 401k plan. At the very top, we have the core investments. These are the index funds that are available to you. Then we'll move into the satellite investments. It starts out with the most conservative choices at the top, and as we progress down this worksheet, we'll go into the fixed income, the U.S. growth and income, the U.S. equity funds, and then into the more aggressive funds, which are the international and the sector funds. Each week, we'll update the performance of each of the funds in your 401k. We'll update the closing price, the month-to-date return, the quarter-to-date return, and the year-to-date returns. This is helpful because you're able to see how your funds are doing compared to the other funds in the same category, as well as to the funds in different categories. Right now you can see that there's a little bit of a mixture. The U.S. funds have done quite well. The international funds have been leading, but they've had a little bit of a pullback this week. And let's go ahead and go right back up to our, what I consider the most important part of the worksheet, and that's our current weekly trends. Down column V is our week-over-week trend scores, and to me this is the most important column, followed closely by the column to the left and the column to the right. Those are the three that we'll be using to help make the asset allocation decisions. The center column V is a week-over-week trend score showing the trend of each of the funds. When you see a bright green, those are the funds that have been the strongest on a week-over-week basis. And when you see the bright reds, those have been the funds that have been the weakest on a week-over-week basis. So that's a good place to start to see where the activity has been for each of the funds. When you see a lot of green and yellow, those have been relatively strong performers for the week. And when you see a lot of red, those have been the ones that have been underperforming for the week. So those often signal a change in the market sentiments. The Greenlight Investor system makes it real easy. We try to find funds that have a green light down the long-term trend column, as well as a green light just to the right of the relative strength trend change. Green lights on the right side of column V indicate that there's generally positive momentum in your funds. The red lights indicate generally a negative momentum in your funds. So if you're given a choice, why not stay in the funds that have a positive momentum? One of the more important columns for making a decision is looking at the long-term trend for your funds. When you see the red, the bearish, that means that they're generally a negative long-term trend, and you'll want to stay away from those. And when you see green, those are more positive. All right, let's go ahead and we'll see how we can use the red, green, and yellow lights to help with the asset allocation functions. To view the asset allocations, let's go to the view. Let's go to our custom views, and I'm going to click on just my allocation. This takes us to the asset allocation portion of the worksheet. And again, if you don't have an asset allocation set up, you can click on the guidelines here to get a baseline for your asset allocation. Once you get the baseline, you'll click over to My Selections and simply plug them in. The goal is to have 100% invested, and that's between the different asset classes. You can see that we have the index funds. This is the amount that our allocation worksheet says that we should have in the index funds. We have a 10% allocation to our money market funds. These are the cells right above the yellow that we're looking at. And we can update these based on the allocation guidelines. Here we have the fixed income funds, the growth and income funds. As we scroll down, see we have the U.S. equity funds with a 30% allocation. And we'll have our international funds with a 30% allocation. And our sector fund has a 10% allocation. With that said, here's where the easy part of the Greenlight Investor system comes in. We have our allocations all set, and we'll simply slide the green, red, and yellow lights over to our allocations. I like to start out with having column U, V, and W, the three columns that are right next to the allocation. When we see our allocation, which is 10% to index funds, we see that this is bullish, and this has a green light, and it's also been strong, so there's nothing to do with that fund for the week. The next fund is our storage for additional capital that we're not using, and here we have a 10% allocation to the money market funds. Below we have a 5% allocation to fixed income. Here we're seeing a yellow light, which is a hold. We see a yellow in the week over week relative strength cell, and we're still seeing a green to the right. But you can see that the numbers, the numerical value, which shows the trend score, is still continuing to weaken. So with the green light and a yellow light, we're okay to sit in that, and we'll just stay there for another week and see how this market moves. With 2 red lights and 4 yellow lights, if we continue to see red build up there, we'll most likely move this over to cash until we see the green lights start to reappear. Down here in the growth and income fund is a good example of that. We were waiting last week with the weakening green lights. We turned red, yellow, and yellow. So with that, it's a simple choice. I'm going to go ahead and take this down to a 0, and I'm going to move the 5% cash that we had allocated to the growth and income funds. I'm going to move that up to our money market fund till we start to see more of the green lights appear. All right, let's go down to our U.S. equity funds. Here we have a 30% allocation. And when we slide our slider, we'll look at the column U, V, and W. And we're seeing we have a green light to the left and a green light to the right of column V. So we're fine with that fund, nothing to do. Likewise down here, we see that we have the green light to the left and a green light to the right of column V. So again, we have nothing to do in that fund. This fund here, we have a 10% allocation, and we're seeing that it's continuing to weaken. So if you wanted to be an early decision maker, you could move this over to cash until we started to see more green lights. You'd have the option of moving this 10% down to this green light, where we have a green light to the left and a green light to the right. Or you could simply wait one more week and see what happens with the fund. but it helps you make a decision as to your allocations. Let's go down a little bit further and we look at the other 20% that we have allocated to international funds. Here we can see that we're still on the bullish sign long term on the left side of column V, and we're still green to the right, so there's nothing to do with this fund. And finally, let's go down to our 10% allocation. This is in our sector funds. We have a green light and a green light here, but we're seeing that this has been continuing to deteriorate. So what we could do using the green lights is we could look for a fund that's looking like it's improving, and it's the strongest green light that we've seen on a week-over-week basis. So with a little bit of additional research, if we decided to do that, we would simply move the 10% from there to here. That keeps us with a 10% allocation to the sector funds, but we've changed over from one fund to the other. Let's take a look and see what the changes are now. Here we had the allocation in the real estate fund, so we've decided to move it over to the financial services sector fund. We still keep our 10% allocation, but we've just changed the fund that it's allocated to. And likewise, let's go back up to our growth and income. Here we had a 10% allocation to our Wellesley income fund. Since that one turned a red light on us, we moved that. Our 5% allocation is now 0, and it's just temporary. As soon as we see green lights reappear, we'll go ahead and move this back into our growth and income funds. And you can see that our allocation to the money market is a little bit higher. We have 10% allocated as our target, and with us adding the extra 5% to the money market, we now show that in the yellow that our actual allocation is now a little bit overweighted to the money market, with 15% being held there. That's all there is to taking a look at your 401k selections each week and trying to stay with the funds that have the strongest momentum and staying away from any funds that are showing a lot of weakness with the red lights to the left and the right of column V. This concludes the presentation for the week. I want to thank you for taking the time to watch the video. I hope it has been helpful and has given you some ideas and resources for managing your 401k choices. To find out how the Greenlight Investor can help you make sense of your 401k allocations, simply visit our website at thegreenlightinvestor.org. You can always email me, and if you'd like to be added to our email distribution of this worksheet, simply add your email address to our website, and I'll add you to the weekly mailing list that goes out either Saturday or Sunday each weekend. Thank you again for watching this video presentation.